Well, Sean, so tell us a little bit about like, obviously you're in the field of helping pharmacies to buy and sell. What are you seeing right now in the market? There's always a pro and a con, right, to each side. So what's kind of happening right now for you?
Right now it's, finding a lot of serious and interested buyers is one of the challenges we're facing now. With the uncertainty of, how is this double DIR fee going to iron out? How's it going to play out? What are the reimbursements going to switch to? A lot of the buyers that we've worked with in the past have kind of been on hold for the last several months. And then you've got the compounded effect of the increased interest rates with some of the banks out there. It's making it challenging to buy to some extent. The other thing we're seeing that we've got several pharmacies that are upside down. They owe more than what the value of their pharmacy is, and when you've got a UCC lien tied to it, it's hard to sell that pharmacy if you can't get that UCC lien released. So that's another challenge that we're seeing today. People are waiting too long to try and get out. They've taken, either an idle loan here, a line of credit there, whatever it is. It's just been tough the last several months, and everybody that's going to listen to this knows what it's been like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get your take on, obviously there's been a lot of discussion. You're in a lot of circles where pharmacists are ready to kind of throw in the towel. Some are thinking about selling. I'd love for you to share just some of that feedback that you've heard in your circles.
Yeah, Sean, so it's interesting. I've been doing it for 25 years, and we've been approached by chains and chains every year, every month. It gets more aggressive. It's just interesting to hear pharmacists, what they're going through now. The biggest challenge I hear is pharmacists who want to sell, and the question is, what am I going to do? I think that for me is the number one question that I was. So then, what am I going to do? They don't want to go back to the chains. I think in this pharmacy business, you make X amount, but you don't planning for an exit. I think in any business is always challenging, right? Except, so it's an interesting, and obviously in the last few years, obviously this last past year with the DIRs coming here or finishing, I should say. I don't know if they're ever finishing, but the topic has come up on a nonstop basis, and question of what are we going to do. So it's interesting time. So I'm sure for you. Between selling, do you convince them not to sell if they can sell, and what are you going to do? So that's what I'm hearing from this end, from my buddies all the time. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Sean,
we hear that all the time. This was supposed to be the time because the average age of the owner was in the 60s, right? The greatest age class is above 60 right now among independent owners. So we were thinking, okay, that's going to be the biggest opportunity for us, is contacting some of those owners that are ready to retire. But with the reimbursements just killing pharmacies lately and some of the regulations, we're seeing everybody saying, this isn't working. The saying is, you don't own the pharmacy owns you. Well, that's true, but typically there was some financial incentive to do that. But right now it's tough. We've got owners that have owned a pharmacy for 10 years and say, listen, I'm not making anything anymore, but what I got to provide for my family. I got kids that are about ready to go to school. And so what you're seeing is definitely, if they had other options that were obvious to them, I think more people would be getting out right now.
yeah.
you know,
Well, Sean, go ahead, Ian, or go ahead.
I was going to say also the interesting, Sean, from my perspective and people I've spoken to, there's also quite a few who want to get into the business, which is interesting too, which I talk to them and they're okay with maybe taking a little bit less money, but they're like, look, I want to, or they have strategic or new novelty ideas that they want to go in with. So I'm also hearing the other side where they're like, look, I want to, independent, they're not necessarily first time owners though. They've owned stores in the past and they have a niche idea, or they have this niche and they want to come in and they do want to. So I feel like it goes both ways, right? Are you seeing the same thing also?
Yeah. So where I said it's challenging finding a lot of buyers, we certainly have some of those buyers that are not taking advantage of the situation, but they're really capitalizing on being able to purchase some of these pharmacies at a reduced price because their value is based on their profitability. So they're taking the opportunity to really grow their business. And the other thing they're getting from this, they're getting better purchase agreements with their wholesalers, because the higher volume that they have, the more they can negotiate and leverage their purchase price. So we've got a lot of strategic buyers that are currently doing that. And my personal belief, it's just my perspective, I think pharmacies pretty much at the low. I see a lot of states making progress on the legislature, and I think, if you're thinking about buying additional pharmacies or getting into it, I think now's the time, because with the values down where they currently are right now, at a 2.5, 3-time multiple of your normalized net profitability, that's typically what the banks are loaning at. I think this is a great opportunity for those to get into it that have the energy. Tom was on earlier saying, if you're gonna sit in a corner and sucking your thumb, this is not the place for you. You've got to make a difference. You've got to find that niche. You've got to have the energy. And that's one thing I was going to add, Jason, when you said, what did I take away from when Tom was on? But all three of you seem to have a lot of energy, and it's nice to see, because we don't always see that when we're visiting pharmacies, day to day. We see the frustrations and we hear the venting. And anyway, I'm getting
One
excited.
thing that Amit, I'm going to tie right into your pillar, which is mindset, right? I think that's where you might have been going.
I was just gonna say, so Sean, I'm surrounded by individuals who do really well, and in different businesses. And here's the thing: their mindset, they're all doing innovative things. So when I look at pharmacy, I go, if you're not planning to do innovative things, then you don't belong in the business. You don't belong in any business. So let's say, for example, you're a pharmacist and you say, okay, I'm going to sit in the corner and complain and suck my thumb. No problem. Well, good luck to you if you want to go to a different business that pays well, because I guarantee you're going to crash and burn in that business. So in my mind, it really goes back to a mindset of whether, sure, pharmacies' margins are very tight, but at the same time, too, in any business, you have to go out there and you have to produce, right? I very rarely meet business owners who are very successful who are sitting there like, hey, man, everything's great. I'm status quo. They're pushing and they're trying and they're innovating. And I know, Jason, we've talked about this many times. Got to try different things. What is working for you, and you dial on that. What are the needle moving activities, and what are you focusing on that's moving the needle?
Yeah. It's just like when Tom was mentioning, like, hey, I'm going to service the client regardless if they can't do the delivery fee, but how do I get that customer to refer in another person that can drive that profitability back in, right? So it's thinking innovatively and every step and change within your business. So Sean, I'd love to bring you back in here and talk about both sides of the table, right? So I'd love for you to share exit strategies for businesses that are pharmacists that are thinking about selling right now. And then after that, I'd love for you to share about those who are thinking about buying. What are some strategies they should be doing to plan to think about buying, right?
Yeah. Okay. So for those that are thinking about selling, there are some things that you should do to prepare. You shouldn't just pick up a phone and call somebody and say, okay, I think I want to sell. Can you help me? Cleaning up your financials is probably the most important thing. Going through those profit and loss statements, going through your tax returns, and start removing some of the unnecessary expenses that most owners put in to reduce their tax liabilities. Make that profit and loss statement as clean as they can. Make sure that it's matching up with that tax return. The cleaner a P&L is, the more it matches with the tax return, the less due diligence a buyer is going to ask from a seller to verify the business is what it is. So that's a big thing to do. The other thing, when you're doing that, try and improve your profitability. We see so many owners that get content with the way things have run for the last several years, that they really take their eye off their operating expenses. could they cut hours? Are they 8 to 6, 8 to 7 during the week? Are they open on Saturdays where they really don't need to be? Do they have a lot of techs that they really don't need because they're afraid of cutting Betty Lou's hours or whatever it is? Go out and renegotiate your purchase agreement. I'm working with an owner that hasn't reworked a purchase agreement for over 10 years. That's horrible. His gross margins are killing him right now. But as far as preparing to sell, yeah, there's definitely some things you can do to help increase your purchase price when it does come time to sell. So start thinking ahead. That the pitfall that I would tell owners to watch out for is the one more year syndrome, thinking that, you know what, I'll give it one more year. I'm gonna turn things around. I'm gonna update the fixtures. I'm gonna make it nicer. I'm gonna do more marketing. I'm gonna do this service. Rarely do we see it actually happen. And then before you know it, they take out a loan or something else, and their business slides to a point that it's at a point of no return. So I would caution owners to watch out for the one more year syndrome.
What's the timeline that if those are ready to sell, when should they start planning and doing these activities that you just referenced?
Ideally, and it doesn't happen a lot of times, 2 years, I would say.
2 years
I would
ahead
say
of
2
time.
years with the financials. If you could do it a year in advance, that's helpful, because a lot of banks are going to go back and they're going to determine what they're going to lend on a business based on the last full year is going to be the biggest piece of information they're looking at. So if you could reduce your purchase cost, reduce your expenses, and make your profitability higher over the last full year, that's going to help you the most.
Good deal. And then what about on the buying side? What are some strategies and recommendations you have right now?
So on the buying side, it depends on who you are. If you're a first-time buyer, do your homework. Don't go in and buy a job just because you don't want to work for a chain. We've seen too many people not understand what they were getting into, not understand the complexities of owning a pharmacy. So I would say if you're a first-time buyer, I think it's a great opportunity. Working for yourself is a wonderful thing, but just educate yourself before you do that. And then with regards to, most of the buyers that we see today usually have at least one or more existing pharmacies. I would, depending on how they're going to purchase the pharmacy, look at your different financing options, talk to a seller about carrying a note. We typically don't suggest sellers carry too much of a note, but if they carry part of a note, like 10, 15%, that helps the entire transaction go smoother, allows for a buyer maybe to offer what the owner's looking for, but be flexible. And do your due diligence. Don't just buy a pharmacy based on what the owner's telling you. Do your due diligence. Look at some of those bank statements. Look at the invoices on the purchasing. Make sure everything matches what the P&L says it is.
Yeah. And then for pharmacies who are looking at expansion right now, knowing there's opportunity because there's so many pharmacies closing down, what's kind of your advice for those that already have maybe 1 or 2 pharmacies looking to expand to maybe a third?
So I think a great opportunity out there right now is to identify not necessarily younger people, but pharmacists that have a lot of energy and passion that maybe aren't owners, and bring them into your group as like a junior partnership type level. If you can find those people, you can buy pharmacies and put this person into it, teach them how to run it, and have them build that business. They might be at, give them a 10% ownership of the company after a year, whatever your junior partnership options look like. But I think if I was owning independents today, that's the model I would go with. I would first identify pharmacists that have a lot of energy, passion, good ideas, patient care, and bring them into my mix and find pharmacies that they could work in for me.
Love it. What's your biggest, what's the biggest mistake you see pharmacists make when either buying or selling? What's the kind of the number one for you that stands out?
Probably when they're selling with their price expectations. A lot of owners go into the process of selling without fully understanding what the value of their pharmacy is. And then they get somebody that offers a fair, what we consider anyway, a fair market price, and they turn it down. Oh no, I've had this pharmacy for 3 decades. I can't sell it for that. And then 6 months goes by and they realize they're not getting any better offers. Instead, their business is declining and the offers get lower and lower. Find out what the true market value of your pharmacy is. And you can do that through many people. A lot of pharmacy brokers give free valuations. A lot of your wholesalers will look at your business and tell you what they believe the value of your pharmacy is. But, know the value of your pharmacy and what you can expect before you go into the process.
Yeah, great advice. Do you have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share? Because I know there's always that path, right, of going left, going right, and every pharmacist has gone down that path. Should I stay? Should I sell? Right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, Sean, I was going to ask you. Tell me. I know we're running short on time. Tell me differences between chain purchases and independent purchases. I'd love to know your take on that.
Yes. First of all, there's very few independents that want to sell to a chain. They're the three-headed dog, right? Or whatever it is. But in some instances, a chain can, bail an owner out. Let's say, I guess it depends on where your profitability is. If you've got a store that's neutral profitability or barely profitable, unfortunately, a chain option might be your best choice because they're not going to take all of your expenses. They've already got the expenses. They're going to get the incremental business, and they're probably going to be able to pay you a little bit more than an independent. So I would look at I grew up in independence, and I'd love for everybody to stay as an independent. So if you could look at that profitability, and I think the best way to improve your selling price is to look at that bottom line. Make sure you're always driving that. Now, the differences, let me get back to that. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked a little bit. So the difference is a chain is probably going to be quicker just because they don't have to apply for a change of ownership. They don't have to, get the new third-party contracts. They've already got all that. They're just acquiring the assets and throwing it into their store. But they're usually going to require an owner to make sure they restrict the use of that space. So that owner may have 2 years of rent they got to pay out of their pocket. So that takes away from what they're going to get, their net purchase price. Or let's say they're in a loan or a long-term lease. They've got 4 years left in their lease. If they could sell to an independent buyer, they're going to assume that lease, taking away the liability of that lease being theirs. So that's a great advantage from an independent. You keep all your employees typically happy when you're selling to an independent. You have your legacy that goes on. Even though you sell the business, most pharmacy owners want to see their legacy live on. You sell to a chain, it's pretty much gone. It's going to close up and people are going to forget about it. As far as the price, that is so hard to really address because every pharmacy is different. Chains are going to pay different amounts based on proximity, based on your business, based on their gross margins, based on their situation. So it's hard to really say who's going to pay more because every situation is different. I don't know if that's where you're going for on the difference.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, this has been a great episode. A lot of great discussions, and I appreciate both Sean and Tom for joining us today. We're out of time for today, but we could go on, like I said, for hours on these discussions. Sean, where can independent pharmacy owners learn more about you if they're thinking about buying or selling? How can they get in touch with you?
Yep, very simple, just www.integrity-rx.com. And all of our consultants, we're all registered pharmacists. We've been in pharmacy, all aspects of it, the compounding, infusion, LTC, retail. We've got the expertise, and we've got people located throughout different pockets of the country. So we're all somewhat local to whoever it is. But yeah, integrity-rx.com.